corruption may jam, and I do not haram and whenever read a carta, you know, we are what the Niata, you know, whenever read a carta, you know, yeah, what the Niata, you know, whenever read cum, Chabat, you know, Chabab, what the Ni, Chabab, you know, whenever read cum, Chabab, you know, Chabab, what the Ni, Chabab, you know, so you guys can share it on your page. On your page.
Okay.
On PPCA?
On your page, on your personal page too.
Oh, yeah, no, we'll do that. I think we should. So should I, where do I share it now? Here it says share. Okay.
But it says video file or slides.
Share.
Like click share and then your profile will do that.
I don't see.
It says, Abram, that we should share on as a video or as slides or a screen.
As a video. So when you see it's live, so just click.
It says video live. That's what we share, right?
Yeah, share. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, it's.
It doesn't let me do that. It goes to
the file.
It goes to a file.
It's going to the file. Do you see right? Do you see right here? When you click the video, and then you share, and then you write pause, and then you share pause.
No, it goes to my. It goes. It asks me to save it to a file.
Yeah.
Maybe
because you are on the phone, on your phone.
No, I'm actually using my computer, and I have mute, stop cam, settings, share, and leave video and having issues. So should I? When I press share, which is what I'm hearing here, it asks you to either do slides, video file, or share screen.
Share screen. Try that.
Oh, okay. Share screen. So, I see. Okay, share screen, and it will go to my Facebook page, right?
Right. And for those of you who are watching, please start sharing too. Sharing the video while we start. Let me play the music.
Not cooperating with them.
Salam bejam, mashakil bejam, amna junub haram alaikum. Shawul bejay, corruption bejam, amna junub haram alaikum. Whenever read a carta, junub ya watani arta junub. Whenever read a carta, junub ya watani arta junub. Whenever read kum, chabab. Hello guys, start sharing the video. Chabab junub, whenever read kum, chabab junub, chabab watani. شباب جنوب كل يوم نصلي دارين سلام والويدا سلام بيجم مشاكل بيجم أبناء جنوب حرام عليكم كل يوم نكوري دارين شغل مع الحكومة شغل بيجي corruption بيجم أبناء جنوب حرام عليكم جنوب كل الخير أبناء جنوب كل الخيرات ونيل كل الخير نيل جنوب كل الخيرات غابات كل الخير غابات جنوب كل الخيرات جبال كل الخير جبال جنوب كل الخيرات جرام فوق صعب الوطن دفن فوق سيد الوطن جرام فوق صعب الوطن دفن فوق سيد الوطن سلام بيجم مشاكل بيجم أمنا جنوب حرام عليكم Corruption they jumbo, and I do not haram and whenever read a carpet, we are walking the whenever read a carpet, yeah, walking whenever he come, Chabab, Chabab, walking, Chabab, whenever he come, Chabab, Chabab, walking, Chabab, Kulayom, Nasal leader in Salam, well, waiter, Salam Bejam. مشاكل بجنبه أبناء جنوب حرام عليكم كل يوم نقول كريم شغل مع الحكومة شغل بجاي ورابشون بجنبه أبناء جنوب حرام عليكم جنوب كل الخير أبناء جنوب كل الخيرات ونيل كل الخير نيل الجنوب.
Okay. Welcome everyone. Welcome to South Sudan Eagle Media. My name is Abraham Madut. I'm one of the hosts of tonight's show. My guest in the studio is Dr. Madut and Usas Abraham Awolich. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. And for those of you who are watching in Facebook, YouTube, thank you for tuning in. Please start here the video. And for those of you in Clubhouse, thank you. Pin people in. We will begin our discussion. So what we are for tonight's show, as we know there's a story, there's issues going on in our country, in South Sudan. We have been seeing for few days or few weeks. There is intention going on in Juba. And we'll see. So tonight, I invited Dr. Madut and Dr. Abraham Awolich to give us, to analyze the issues going on. Like what we see the report that has been released like a couple of days ago by the government, and the topic, the title of that article release is for the releasing of declassified document, which is the title related pushing the reset button for South Sudan. So tonight we're going to be talking about that. These two gentlemen are well known. They were there in South Sudan since the beginning when the conflict started 2013 until now. They know what's going on. So welcome, Dr. Madut and Abraham Awolich. I will give you guys a chance to introduce yourself, and then we'll start our program. Dr. Jog.
Hello, thank you, Abraham Adit. It's a great pleasure to be back here with you, and want to thank you for the service you provide for our people who have limited opportunities to interact and dialogue with their compatriots across the country. I am Madut. I am currently a professor of anthropology at Syracuse University. This is in New York, in the United States of America. I used to be director of the Sud Institute, which is a think tank based in Juba. I previously worked as undersecretary in the Ministry of Culture and Heritage in the new government of South Sudan just before the independence, and then for a year and a half thereafter. I am somebody who has invested my intellectual capacity, my time in educating the world about the cultures, traditions, multiple identities of people who are within the borders of what we now call South Sudan. Previously, we were doing so in the context of us being a sub-nation of Sudan. And my academic research is on issues of ethnic identity in the context of the old colonial Sudanese state in Sudan and in what has now become South Sudan. So I speak to issues of us being a colonized people, colonized by Europeans, colonized by the Turkish, Egyptian, colonized by the Arab North. And that history has left us gasping for fresh air in terms of us being able to speak to the world about who we are with pride in our identity, in our culture, in our in region, with regards to our resources, our challenges, our history, our resilience as a revolutionary people who wrestled our country and our sovereignty from the jaws of a very, very monstrous enemy. And now we are being cornered into a situation where we are having to wrestle our country once again from the jaws of an internal enemy, which is our own people, our own former liberators turned rulers who are mirroring what we had experienced in the hands of Northern Sudanese. Sorry to be long, but that's who I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Job. The next, Abraham Wallich.
Thank you, Abraham Madut. Yes, I'm a member of the People's Coalition for Civil Action, and which is a pro-democracy civil rights organization started on the 30th of July last year in Juba. And before that, I had worked with Professor Juk at the SET Institute for 10 years, from May 2011, 2012, until I resigned in November this past year, November 2021. And I had done some work also with the South Sudan National Dialogue and briefly with the Ministry of Defense. Then other things here and there, including being part of government delegation to Rome for the peace talks. And so I think that is enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ustaz Abraham Wallich. Let us start our topic. 2 days ago, we received and we see in the news that the government released the declassified document about what happened in 2013 and 2016 that caused the civil war in the country. And that document is about 72 pages. And we see some of the leaders, their name in there. So can you guys give us, what do you guys think about that declassified documents? That's my first question. Dr. Madut, go first.
Thank you, Abraham. Yes, the document, first of all, there are 3 or 4, perhaps 5 things I want to say about that document. The first one is, it's called an intelligence report, which was classified for all these years, and now it is declassified, meaning that the president last Monday declared this document open to the public. So we all rushed to it, thinking that we might find something new in it. But unfortunately, it was our euphoria got quickly deflated when we realized that this is something we all knew. Any South Sudanese who was discerning knew this. And so there was nothing groundbreaking about it. there was no new information that came forward about it, except for one thing, and that is one of the current vice presidents of South Sudan, Stephen Taban Dengai, is the predominant character in this saga, in this play that President Salva Kiir told us we can listen to or can watch, can read. And the aim of releasing this in order to show up Taban Dengai as the instigator, the trigger point to the war of 2013 is one, untrue. Yes, we all knew Taban Dengai has always been mischievous, and he has played a big part of the war that took place from late 2013 through 2014, 2015. He played a big role in that war. But there is no way any sensible South Sudanese can say that that whole war was triggered by Taban, when in fact we know all the facts. President Kiir himself was front and center of how that war started, including his July 31st, 2013, when he ordered his entire cabinet null and void, which angered a lot of people, including how he responded to the press conference which took place on December 6, 2013. The press conference in which the Secretary General of the SPLM, Pagaramom, the first Vice President of South Sudan, Riek Machar, the Minister of Cabinet Affairs, Deng Alor, and various others, including the Governor of Lakes, who was fired unconstitutionally, including Taban Dengai, who was fired unconstitutionally, including Alfred Ladogori, who was Minister of Environment at the time, including a dozen others who were fired on that wholesale demolition that President Kiir brought forth. When you look at this, you cannot, any sensible person cannot say that what Taban Dengai exchanged on the phone with a few of his armed comrades in Juba or in the days following that December 6th press conference could be the only reason why South Sudan went to a civil war on December 15th, 2013. That is, nobody can believe that. We have seen all these other reports. The African Union hired a commission to investigate, and there is no such. Individual researchers have investigated this to no such. The judicial system of South Sudan tried members of the G10 on these so-called conspiracies, and no evidence came forward. So what we are saying is that perhaps South Sudan was unstable and it was volatile, and there were so many people who were aspiring for public office but could not get it, and therefore opted for this kind of action where they created chaos so that there would be a dispensation in the town which would allow them to then participate. And that didn't work out. The country went to war for the next several years. It didn't work out. But for now, for the president of our country, our president, Salva Kiir, to now come back to us and say, by the way, if you just look into these intelligence intercepts or wiretaps, you might find that, in fact, all these people that I'm talking about, Tabandenga, Riek Machar, all the other ones, including Gitan, including Rebecca Nyandeng, all of them had conspired to overthrow my government, and I had every reason to arrest them. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is a total lie, and it is not borne by the facts. So the question we ask as ordinary people of South Sudan, why did the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir, on Monday last declare that all that wiretapping and all that military intelligence recordings which are at his possession would be made public? What would they serve in a situation where the country was in such tense movement that all you need was just a simple trigger to return the country to war? Why release these documents? First of all, the documents are dubious and nobody knows. They were produced by a lawyer in the United Kingdom, a lawyer who used to work for al-Bashir, by the way, Stephen K. QC, whose offices are in central London, off Grey Inn on Bradford Street. Somebody whose credentials are dubious at best, but criminal at worst, was the one who produced these documents that now the president thinks and is telling us should be made public so that we know who created, who instigated the war. Seriously? And even worse, that law firm from London who used to work for al-Bashir on Darfur issues in order to whitewash al-Bashir's crimes in Darfur. History matters. Any person's background matters. We should keep that in mind. If we are going to rely on this Stephen K., a person who has been hired to deny genocide in Darfur, and he is now the man we are going to be listening to on the triggers of the war in 2013 South Sudan, all of that leaves so much to be desired. Even worse than this, Stephen K. is said to have been paid $17 million US. Seriously? 70 pages of wiretaps is worth $17 million in a country where that $17 million could have built 10 referral hospitals in all the 10 capitals of South Sudan. Are we being serious? Is President Kiir thinking that we are all stupid? And finally, the issue is that these documents, regardless of what value they have, are they suitable to be produced at this hour in the midst of a volatile situation in our country? If we are really leaders whose aspirations is to see a stable country, to release these documents so that you accuse Taban Dengai of being the one who has created the previous war, to tell us that it's Taban Dengai, who is a vice president in the current government, is the man we should go after, even as we have already seen that President Kiir and Taban Dengai, his own vice president, have not been getting along for a whole year. Last week, when President Kiir issued a presidential decree saying that he was unifying the army's command per the ARCIS security arrangements clause, he replaced 3 top generals who were under Taban Dengai, with new appointees from Riek Machar's camp, in order to tell Riek Machar, don't withdraw from the peace process. I am appointing your own people to come into these jobs. Knowing full well that the fact that the president has not talked to Vice President Taban for a year, the fact that the president is using the positions of his army generals and replacing them with Riek Machar's people, the fact that the country is in a serious fix when it comes to stability and peace implementation. When you consider all of this, any rational citizen will analyze and conclude that President Kiir is trying to create new and fresh mayhem such that the country will go back to war. His unpaid generals and his unpaid armies can pay themselves by robbing our citizens. That's one thing, the solution that he can provide with this mindset. Second, that the peace agreement will fail. It will all collapse. And if it does, President Kiir will come back to us and say, oh, the peace agreement has collapsed. Too bad. I don't know what happened. Can you people give me an extension for the interim period so that we can implement the peace agreement because now it has collapsed? Really? How many times? 2013, 2016, 2022, the English language adage is slap me once, slap me twice, slap me thrice, and it's an offense. We will not stand by being slapped 3 times by the same Salva Kiir in the name of being the president of our country. It has been 17 years of his power. Kids who were born in 2011 are 17 years old today. And the only thing they have known is Salva Kiir making decrees. No, this cannot happen. This cannot be allowed. We would all be fools if we should be taken for a ride once again in 2022. Thank you. Sorry to be long.
So thank you, Dr. Madut. Is it what I'm hearing from you? Are you saying that the report is not true? And my second question to you, follow-up question, is it right for the government to release this document to let the people of South Sudan know what exactly happened on 2013, 14, 15, and 16?
Yes, it would be right for a government to say to its citizens that here is the credible information about what happened in 2013, 2016. And that here is the person you should all blame. But the problem is, and what was the narrative built from that is that there was an attempted coup and Taban Dengai was in the lead. My issue with this is this. Don't we know how a military coup requires some basic essential realities? Can Taban Dengai speak to one man? And 75% of the recorded messages are Taban Dengai talking to one man. Can that really create a coup? In order to have a coup, you would have, if you are using recorded messages, phone calls, and you want to use that to pin it on somebody, you would have to have Taban Dengai speaking to 2, 3, 4, 10, 20, 15 people, not to one person. and not to one person who is not even near the state house, which was being intended to be captured, was not even near the television or the radio broadcaster so that you can announce you have taken over. It's not near the headquarters of the army so that you can at least say, I have taken control of the army headquarters. It was from Qayada, which is one single tiny little unit of the South Sudan Armed Forces. There's no way any rational mind can say that this is evidence enough to say that there was a plan for a coup, and therefore we had to protect our government, our people against a coup plotter. It's not enough. So it's not that I'm saying it's untrue, it's just that the president, the government of South Sudan had everything in their disposal to ratchet down the level of violence and not have to create a war over this. If you had heard Taban talking like this and you know who he was talking to, why couldn't you just go and arrest Taban? Why couldn't you just go and arrest these people who you were talking to and stop the country from going to war right there and then? Instead, the president listened to all this, waited all night, and in the next day, he put on his military uniform, declaration of war, and he marches into the meetings of the National Liberation Council, which was taking place in Nyakuran. And he surrounded himself with all his military generals. We watched that thing on video on SBC, on the National Broadcasting Corporation. And we saw that at that moment, President Kiir was nowhere near backtracking from the brink of war. And he was ready to order his lieutenants to say, go and kill them all. The ones who declared a coup on me, kill them all, and all their supporters. And that is what led to that. What had happened the night of December 15th was very small spots. By the next day, the 16th, it was all war around the city, thanks to President Kiir showing the force by virtue of his military uniform, coming into a political meeting of NLC. I mean, what were we expecting would happen if the president, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, come into a political meeting in full gear? What was going to happen?
There's a question that before I give a chance to Abraham, there is a question that has been asked to you by Mjong Makur. Let me pull up this question. He asking you that if you can read it on the screen.
Yeah, I
he's
can
asking
see, yeah.
Are you questioning the credibility of 9DR law firm or the document? Question number 2, are you saying the government should have not narrowed the will size of the story? And number 3, have you compared the pushing the reset burden for the South Sudan with articles, and what are they saying?
Right.
Document to solve.
Those are an incredibly important question, and that the person asking has a really clear investigative mind. Are we saying that Stephen K. and his report is illegitimate? No. Stephen K. is a hired man. He's a lawyer. He was hired with exorbitant price to produce a document that shows that there were people in Juba who staged a coup against the government, and he wanted to demonstrate that by virtue of analyzing all the wiretaps and all the intercepts, and he did his job. I don't question his credibility. What I question is, who does that for 17 million US dollars? So that's one. On the second question about whether this information that he has released is credible. It may be credible, it may be what it is, but at this juncture, in the volatile moment of our country, where we are on the brink of war, is it timely for a responsible government to release it and risk pushing Taban Denga and his people into a possibility of creating a war? Maybe if South Sudan government is confident in itself, maybe that doesn't matter. If Taban Denga wants to go to war, he may be defeated in military sense. Let him go to war, we'll screw him, right? So that may be the case. But if we are a people who have suffered from wars for so long, and we are trying to do everything possible in our means to avoid war and violence and bloodshed, is it really worth releasing this information in this volatile moment in our history? I say no. A president who wants to keep safety and peace of his country would have taken that information and call up his own vice president and say, listen, man, we have all this information on you. And that information doesn't help you at all. So it is either you come clean right now. You come to us and admit that you had made a mistake back then, and that we can have a discussion over this. We will sweep it under the rug in the interest of our country so that we don't go back to war, or else. President Kiir could have done that. The last question, question number 3 in that text is talking about, okay, so what if these documents that have been produced by Stephen Kay are really the trigger of 2013? Can we take this and compare them to all the other reports that have been produced on the war? There have been books. The former ambassador of Canada to Juba, Coughlin, wrote a book. The African Union Commission of Inquiry for South Sudan produced a document in 2013, 2015. There are individual experts, including the United Nations Commission of Experts, have produced documents on what triggered the war. So if we take these documents that have just now emerged and compare them to all these other reports, you will easily see that these newly released documents have nothing new to tell us. These things have already been made available. And a rational government of a rational people, of a people who mine the resources of their country, would not sit back and allow their government to pay $17 million to a London-based law firm which has produced a shoddy product which Madut, I could have written for $300 and even wrote a better report. What the hell are we doing with our country and our resources, for God's sake? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Job. The next speaker, Awolich.
Well, so I will make a few comments. I agree with some of what Professor Jog has said, and my focus is on I'm not going to focus on the content of the document and whether it is true or not. The question that I have and the concern that I have with the document is, what is the motive? The press conference that the president held on Monday, which I watched carefully, his body language and what he was saying about the need for peace and reconciliation, they don't reconcile with the information that has been provided. If the president wants to address issues related with with truth and reconciliation, the first place to start is to make reconciliation with Dr. Riek Machar and make reconciliation with Taban Dengai and all the people that he had accused of plotting to overthrow his government. This document does not do that. It has the opposite reaction. It has the opposite consequence. It will aggravate the relationship, and it will anger the people who are portrayed to have been the plotters of coup. And so this document goes against the Arusha agreement, which the parties signed, which they said they will forgive each other. It goes against the RRCs, which is also an agreement to forgive each other, the political disagreements that they have. The only thing that has not been forgiven are crimes against humanity that have been committed. And there is a body that has been charged with the authority to investigate these crimes. And that is the Hybrid Court of South Sudan, which is incorporated in the peace agreement. Now, the president mentioned that even though this information is inflammatory, that those who are accused in that document will be given presidential amnesty. Now, the problem is that there is no such thing in the peace agreement that gives president power to give people presidential amnesty for crimes committed against the people of South Sudan, especially war-related crimes. And so I have completely failed to understand what the purpose of this report is. Number two, this report involves criminal activities that was committed, which is likely to be investigated in the court of law. Now, by putting out this information prematurely, you are making it useless. It cannot be presented in the court of law because the law doesn't work like that. You cannot put evidence out in the public to shape public opinion, including the opinion of judges against individuals, and then later on you bring the same evidence to the court. It doesn't work. The third point is that there is a constitutional issue, which is why the court rejected these recordings in 2014 when they tried the former detainees. The recordings were done without a warrant of court, because our constitution, under the Bills of Rights, gives each individual a right to privacy. And so if the government suspects that I'm likely to be conspiring against the state, then they need to go to court and prove to the court that I am committing some subversive activities against the state, and therefore the state needs to watch my activities. From there, if that surveillance is granted by the court or by the judge, then now you can collect information on me. If you collect information on my activities privately without seeking court approval, you cannot produce that information as evidence in the court. And so the real challenge I'm having here, Abraham, is that while the government has a reason, because it has declared the conflict in 2013 as a coup, and the rest of the world said we have not seen evidence of coup, the government did not produce that evidence at that time. We are talking about 10 years now. We are 8 months away from celebrating 10 years of the conflict in 2013. Why wait for 10 years? A decade is a very long time. Why do you wait until now to produce such information? The fourth point that I would like to make is that the report tries to negate, to say that the African Union report, the Obasanjo report, and the other reports that have come in the past are not telling the truth. And here is the truth. Do you really need 8 years or 10 years to respond to a lie that was that has been leveled against you? In this show, Abraham, did you insult me now? I will respond right here, right now, because I don't want the listeners to go home with that idea that you have leveled against me without a response. So why did the government wait until 10 years later to produce this report? And so my sense is this, Abraham. This is a trigger to war. This document itself is intended to trigger another cycle of violence in South Sudan. It is intended to anger Taban Dengai, to anger Riek Machar, to anger the former detainees, including Rebecca Nyandeng and others, and to return the country to war so that President Kiir's term of office can be extended. Simple as that. The evidence provided is of no use to the public. You know, what are we going to do? President Kiir knew in 2016 that Taban Dengai was the one who plotted the coup against him. Yet he decided to partner with him so that they can upstage Riek Machar, so that now Taban was helped to plot a coup against Riek. Is that so that they can level, or what was that about? They upstaged Riek Machar, he ran to Congo, and then now Taban was the man. He became a right-hand person of President Kiir. If Taban was such a bad guy, as portrayed in the report, why did the president enter a very close partnership with him?
Maybe he is now trying to run Taban Dengai out of town so he can he can reconcile with Riek Machar.
Exactly.
It's all a game.
So isn't that something that we should question as citizens? Of course, people who support President Kiir will think that, okay, we are just people who don't like President Kiir and we are running a propaganda. But these are legitimate questions. Taban has become useless now because Riek is here. He tried to do the same thing with the whole thing here is this. So you kick Taban out first, and then you go for one more mile with Riek Machar, and then you kick Riek out and bring in Gedwich, right? This is the whole scenario that has already been drawn out. And what is all that game for? It's to extend the ruling period of President Kiir. This is the bottom line. And so I think that, Abraham, if we want to be honest to ourselves as a people and as a country, there is nothing wrong with the government releasing a document on to explain its side of the story. Every human being should be entitled to that. So the government has we have no problem with the government releasing a document. The major problem with it is the timing. The other problem with it is absolute biasness of the report. When those people were talking, when Taban Denga was talking, and the president knew, didn't president call somebody also to say Yaki Taban is plotting this? Why didn't you have some of those things as well? So the report is absolutely biased. It doesn't give you a complete picture of what actually happened, and it tries to package and squarely blame some individuals of what the crimes they have committed, and tries to absolve a section of our society, when in fact, Professor Joke and I, we have written about the events that took place in the SPLM. They are public. They can be read. We collected that information from the government and from those of Tabandenga and those of Ezekiel. We had interviewed them before, 2 days before the violence. We were actually conducting interviews. And we found that all the parties were prepared for violence. They didn't want to dialogue anymore because dialogue was not going anywhere. So it was just a question of who is going to pull the trigger. And of course, the trigger was pulled, and the rest is history. People were bushed. Villages were destroyed. People were killed in the churches. Women were cut, and their babies were also killed. And you want to whitewash all of that. You want to say, okay, presidential amnesty, everybody go home, no problem. We have reconciled. Yet, the person who is in charge, who is the reconciler in charge, has not reconciled with the very people that he is accusing in the report. So I think, Abraham, it is dishonesty that is killing South Sudan. We have been dishonest to ourselves, been dishonest to our people, and we have not been sincere in what we are trying to do. This report has completely created a lot of confusion. It has no meaning, it has no value, it is not driven by any policy, it is driven by cheap political scores, and it is going to drag the country to war. Obviously, the writing is clear on the wall. Tabandenga and Riek Machar are going to jail. They have to be arrested. They have committed treason because they plotted the coup. That is if I'm Riek Machar, that's how I should read it. Is that a good thing at this time? I don't think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abraham Awolich. You know, you two were a former of Such Institute, think tank in the country. And when the war started in 2013, you two were there, if am I right. And you know very well what's going on. I see this, the camp of Riek Machar, I see the press release. They were saying that they direct the citizen of South Sudan to read the report that African Union released way back 2014. So both of you two were there, 2013, 2014, 2016 during crisis. And you are one of the people, you are eyewitness. Can you compare what you witnessed when you were there? And you mentioned before that you interview Tabandengai and others. Do you compare your experience during the time and the report that has been released right now? How different are they?
Well, I can say on my part that in my judgment as an individual, both sides were guilty of violence. It was not one group trying to capture power and then the other group resist. It was a cascade of events taking place. And Professor Joke has mentioned that. Imagine you are a former governor of a state and you are a former vice president of a country. You are a minister of so. You are a former commander of the SPLA. Overnight, you are thrown to the street. Your powers have been taken. You have no power left. And you try to cling to the party with the hope that if if the elections come, maybe your people will bring you back to power. Only for a president to go on television to announce that all the structures of the party have been dissolved, except his office, which now threaten all these political leaders that, okay, we don't have the SPLM, we don't have the ministerial portfolios, and we don't have our general, we don't have our ranks in the army. What are we going to be? So their backs were on the wall, and they had to fight back. So I have a sense of that these people obviously were angry. They were denied an opportunity for a dialogue. They held a press conference to express their anger. And instead of addressing the issues that they raised, the other party also went on the television very angry. And the president of the republic was the only person who had the opportunity to calm the tempers at that time, if he rose above the politics. What did he do? After he came back, after the burial of Nelson Mandela, we hoped he was going to come back with the spirit of Mandela. He was bellicose in the conference. He was confrontational. He mentioned the history of 1991 and how he's not going to allow it this time around. That was the breakdown of the dialogue. And then everybody was now cleaning his gun, because when the violence when dialogue breaks down, and you are former warlords, you reach for your gun. And so we really don't have the intelligence, because we were civilians and we were limited. We don't know who shot the first bullet, and we cannot verify the reports that which came from Adog Nyaba and other opposition, that they tried to disarm Nuer elements in the Tiger Battalion. And then these guys resisted, and that is what led to the shooting. If that narrative is true, then there was no coup. There was just an abruption of violence as a result of the boiling tensions that were building. But I cannot verify that. These are things that we later are told. We were sleeping and worried about the guns that we heard about. But what we knew with the time developing up to that point, I remember my colleague Zakaria Ding and I spent a number of hours in the parliament running around to try to find elders and nationalists to try to arrest the situation. And on the government side, those that we met said, there is nothing we can do at this time. I didn't interview Taban Dengai directly, but I did interview Ezekiel Lul at that time in Numeri Logistics, and Adog Nyaba also at Logale House. And they were also frustrated. They said there is no dialogue, so nothing is moving forward. And so we could sense frustrations were boiling on both sides. Now, what we cannot pin down is who pulled the trigger. But these guys were actually pushed to the wall. They had no choice at the time. And so I suspect that they definitely had to fight for their space. And I suspect President Kiir wanted this fight to happen so that he can kick them out and justify his actions to arrest them. So this is what I can tell you. Professor Joe probably knows more than I do.
Yeah, Professor Joe. According to the document, to the report, I read it all, you see. But according to the report, what I understand in that report is talk about the genesis, the root cause of the war, of the chaos in 2013. That's what they were focused into it. And that's where they see how those leaders, Taban, and Pagan, and the rest were start meeting and phone communication like that. So this is how this document is about. It's painting the picture that, okay, South Sudanese, this is what happened in the beginning, what the root cause of the war. So you were that. Give us an insight. What do you think about that?
Okay. Thank you, Madut, and thanks, Abraham Awolich, for all those insightful views. Okay, even if you go, Madut, with that argument, saying this is how the 2013 war started, if you go into that argument with the mindset of trying to prevent another 2013, would you go out to such lengths and demonstrate and vilify someone that they were the ones who created the last war? Or would you say that the first lesson we learn from these documents is that it is very easy to trigger a war, and we are not going to allow that to happen again this year? You would say, in 2013, this is how it happened. We are now witnessing a possibility of the same repeating itself. Let us preempt that so that there is not a return to war. You would not publish this document. You will simply enter a dialogue with Saban Gengai because he's angry now. He's angry because the positions of his generals have been appropriated and given to the generals of Riek Machar. He is angry because he's being marginalized in the presidency, not seen a president for 1 year. Do you really go and publish information that vilifies such a person? Or do you simply say, let us not risk another return to 2013? Let's go talk to this person. I'll leave that question to all of us to ponder. If there was a coup in 2013, and you stick to that story that there was a coup, and you managed to nip it in the bud, as it were, and you were able to contain the situation, and the country, though it went to war, you were able to save the presidency, and Salva Kiir stayed in office, and you know the tricks, you know what it takes for you to stay in office. Would you now go out of your way to trigger another war, or do you say, I know this game, I am going to stop it before it starts? Let us not publish this information. Let us go to Taban Dengai and say, here is what we have about the previous war. Let us not repeat that story because our country has suffered. That is a measure of a development of a leader. It's a measure of a leadership. President Kiir did not exercise that leadership last week when he published this report. The report is not giving us anything new. The report is not going to stop Taban Dengai from going back to war. The report is not going to be more credible over and above all the other reports. So what is the use of it at this hour of such volatility in our country? There's no use. It's a measure of leadership for you to weigh the consequences of your action in such a volatile country. If you were a president besieged, feeling that you were cornered right now, the first thing you do is not to go and surround the residence of your vice president, who is powerless, who has nothing. He has no army. Riek Machar came back empty-handed from the bush, left all his forces somewhere, sitting is a slim duck inside Juba. Do you go and surround his office, his house, his residence with tanks, knowing that there is absolutely nothing in the whole world that he can do to warrant trucks and tanks and armored vehicles? What is President Kiir after in doing so? That would be the question you ask yourself, and the people of South Sudan need to ask President Kiir. If you were a people like us, we are ordinary citizens of South Sudan whose ultimate goal is for us to live in peace and harmony with each other, and for our country to serve us and give us services so that we stay in our corners and nobody, and we celebrate our independence. We have never celebrated our independence. On the second anniversary of our independence, we went to war, and it has been war ever since. And it's now going to 11 years, 12 years of the same. We've never celebrated. But if you were a people, us, ordinary people, who are saying all we want is our country to be stable, is our government to serve us, is all of us to get along with each other, all us to celebrate our diversity, and to live harmoniously heretofore, we should speak up publicly to our leaders and say we don't want no more war. We don't care who started it first. We are not children. We are not children on a playground where they say, oh, he started it first. Oh, he started it first. Oh, he slapped me. He threw something at me. We are not kids. And now we've been reduced to being kids. The whole world is watching us. East African region is mocking us. And they are saying South Sudanese leaders don't demonstrate leadership. Because otherwise, how difficult is it for Riek Machar right now, for Salva Kiir right now, for Taban Dengai, for Nyandeng, for all the vice presidents to sit to say, okay, well, we are on our way, or we are on our own. No world leader is coming. No government from around the world, no international organization are coming to help us. If we want to rescue our country, all there is to it is all of us sitting under the tree. We don't even have to go into a conference room. We sit under the tree and say, this conflict, this mayhem is our doing. The solution to it should be our doing. That is the measure of leadership, which our people in various traditional courts and tribal kingships and courtships and chiefdoms, our people have always resolved their problems. A chief from Awil can go to Tony and solve the problem there. A chief from Zande can go to Eastern Equatoria and solve problems of the Lutuko. This has always been our ways. How difficult is it for learned modern leaders to prioritize the interests of their government, of their people, of the country, instead of wasting the resources fighting each other, and simply sit down under the tree and say, listen, what's wrong? If it's presidency, I've held it for 17 years. I am exiting. Let us arrange for a transition. If it's presidency you want, as Riek Machar, bring stability and let the people go to elections so that they can decide on your fate. How difficult is that, for God's sake? Thank you.
Abraham, I just want to make one comment on what Joke said. It's very important because I don't want to lose it. There are two things that I want to catch from Professor Joke, and they are extremely important. One of them is there is what we call the government of national unity. When this report was released, was it discussed in the cabinet? Was it discussed by the presidency, which has 5 vice presidents? No, it wasn't. It was a unilateral decision of President Kiir. Why? Why did that happen? And we have a national unity government now. So that is one way you can question the motive of the report. I think that is an important point. The second point is that the report itself, I'm losing the trend of my thought, but the point is that a shared government should have joint action. Mm-hmm. And this thing should have been the vice president, all the 5 vice presidents. There is nothing that should be classified for them because they are the government. It should have been declassified for them first to look at it, and then they can decide collectively whether this thing is good for the country or not. The fact that it was done unilaterally is a bad faith. It was done in bad faith. And that is what is creating disquiet. This is what is causing people being uneasy about it. I personally, I'm not disputing what is recorded. I'm not disputing it 100%, and I'm not accepting it. It is just the spirit of collegiality, of unity that is contained in the peace agreement. This unity was not demonstrated. In fact, President Kiir should have sit on the table with all his vice presidents in giving that statement about peace and reconciliation, about healing. But if you are sitting alone, your deputies are not aware of this reconciliation that you are initiating, and you are incriminating them. I don't see that as a good spirit. And this is precisely, and the report itself should have been commissioned by the Artigono. The report itself should have been commissioned by the Artigono, because by the time this report was written, there was Artigono. Why was it not done by the Artigono? And so these are some of the questions that we must are intellectual. So get to the bottom of what the motive is, because the motive is important. It is not important for you to just put information out there. It's just like me right now sitting down here and writing and then putting information out there without telling people what my motive is. So this is the issue that I'm grappling with. And it is important for the people of South Sudan, which is why I said before, I did not say it just because I want to say it. I said it because I have a serious feeling about it. This report was intended or is intended to trigger war. If it was not, it should have been a joint project of the Artigono. And when we tell our people here on this platform, okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a follow-up with what you say. You
Yes.
said the Artigono is joining all those parties, IO, IG,
So,
and so and FD. Those are joining Artigono. But this report is coming from IG. I mean, SPLM IG. All right, it's not coming from all the party. So what I see in this report is coming from the government side of President Salva Kiir Mayardit. So that's what I see this report coming to him. My question to you is about like the peace agreement from, I think it's from chapter 1 to chapter 5. And chapter 5 is talk about accountability, right?
yes, transitional justice in general.
Yes. So this document is fall on that. So some of the South Sudanese, they are saying why President jumped from chapter 1 to chapter 5. You see, is this right thing that accountability has been made because they are moving, because we have less than 8 or 7 months left for election. So if this accountability, if this document fall into chapter 5, and this is what I see that I see that what President tried to do. He wanted to tell the people of South Sudan, okay, this is what's going on, this is what happened. And these people are the root cause of conflict that happened. And they were defending their own side. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So, Abraham, there are a couple of problems with what you have just said. Not because you said it, but because of the way those who think like that have problems. First of all, the moment you announce the Artigono, there is no another government. There is just Artigono. So there is no such thing as Tigonu anymore. It's dead long time ago. There is only one government at a time in a country, and that is the revitalized transitional government of national unity. That is the only government that exists now. The only body that could have produced a report would have been the SPLM, but it would have been an SPLM report, not government of South Sudan report. And so that act alone is a violation of the peace agreement, and it goes contrary to the spirit of national unity, which the peace agreement tries to get to. So that is one. Number two, I have already mentioned that the transitional justice mechanism is already spelled out, and there are people responsible for that. If the president wants to start implementing the articles of Chapter 5, the first thing you have to do is to pass a legislation that authorize the establishment of what they call CTHR, which is Truth, Reconciliation, and Healing. And then there is also another organization which is Reparation Commission. And then the third one is the Hybrid Court of South Sudan. So authorize those things first, and then let them do their job. And then you can bring your evidence to the court after. You don't release it to the public. And so it is not in the interest of transitional justice that this report was released. As I have already mentioned, the president also said he is giving people presidential amnesty, those who are accused in that report. Yet, so how does that go together with the accountability now? It doesn't. So the motive is different. The motive is neither justice nor accountability. The motive is not the information being given to the public. It should have been given to the public a long time ago. The motive is different, and that is what we are questioning. What is the motive? And so there are parallel mechanisms with the powers given to them by the agreement, and will be given more powers by the legislation that should come from the parliament. They will perform these jobs. There are commissions assigned to do this job, and there is a whole court assigned to do this job. It is not the president's job to produce evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ustaz Awolich. Yeah. Before I next, through Africa, open your mic if you have a question to ask.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Having a question coming into Clubhouse.
Okay,
so
very good.
Yeah, it sound good. You guys can hear him.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, through Africa.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, let me say words of appreciation to Madut for hosting Professor Madut and Awolich, plus Rajab to analyze, evaluate, and compare this document with the previous document, and what are the impacts this document will create in the current situation of our country. And first of all, I agree with some of the statements. He agreed that the document has nothing new compared to the previous document. Initially, the old document are saying the same thing, but in different language. The only angle which this document differs with the rest of the document is the attempted coup 2013, which the pushing the research battles for South Sudan acknowledged that actually happened. But in the report of African Union, they said they had no sufficient evidence to support the allegations of coup attempt in 2013. Actually, I have two questions to Professor Job, if you can hear me well.
Yeah, you can hear you. Yeah.
We are hearing you.
Yeah. You talk about 17 million being paid to the law firm to produce a 22-page document, of which the document is shallow. Anybody can do that job. even the national security staff can do it. But I want you to comment on $4 billion US, which was distributed among these people. Some of them, they appear in all the documents. Compare this $4 billion US with 17 million which the government paid for the information to be compiled, researched, and then presented to the public for the citizen consumption. Also compare $1 million US, which was actually given for the implementation of peace 2018 to 2019 to 2020. That money disappeared between the committee. Are you saying this money which is being looted in the country is less than compared to 17 million which the government have paid and bring something forth? That's one. Number two, I'm going to Abraham Awolich. Now, thank you so much, Abraham. You actually articulate a lot of things. The same thing to Professor Joe, of which I agree. You all agree unanimously, two of you, about timing. You say timing is wrong for the document to be released. And your worry is only one thing. Your worry is about the start or another conflict that might arise, considering the tension in our country is right now, for which any citizen cannot dispute that fact. But to Abraham, you are saying, why should the government give out the information, including the communications, of which, if he was competent enough and intercepted that Taban Benga is communicating, because Taban is the main actor, why would they not take all the steps for Taban and arrest him? Do you think if government would have arrested Taban, he needs to allegation? Do you think it would have prompted another person? Or do you think the arrest of Taban Benga and if General Wiki was communicating with would have rescued the situation? That's one. Number two, you are condemning the government not to bring out the documents. Are you telling us, Abraham, that citizens are not entitled to have access to such information so that they can form the basis of their judgment? Thank you so much, and I will rest my case here.
Thank you, True Africa. So, Dr. Job, you are next to answer your question.
Okay. Thank you, comrade. I am in agreement with you that any single penny from South Sudan that is used in such a way that doesn't benefit the country and doesn't benefit the people is a penny wasted. Whether we are talking of the $4 billion we are told has been squandered, the oil money, the loans from China, the black market loan from Qatar, UAE, from others, a lot of it has not even been quantified. We don't know how much we have borrowed. We don't know the terms for repayment. We don't know how much of it is going to be a burden on generations of people to come. It's a lot of money for a country to have borrowed and have nothing to show for it by way of infrastructure that has been built with it, or salaries paid, or major services provided. It's a lot of money. I'm not saying that $17 million, which was lost, if this come to be the truth, $17 million given to a lawyer to produce a document that protects the government is not more than $4 billion borrowed by a government which did not protect anyone and squandered it. It goes without saying. It's a no-brainer that $17 million is nothing compared to all the big loot that has happened in the country since its creation. My point was just simply about this particular segment, this particular amount for this particular action. I was saying, even if it was so important for the government to produce that knowledge, the knowledge itself, regardless of its veracity, its worth, and what have you, the knowledge itself, there is no consultancy in this world. We have all been consultants in development, for the UN, for NGOs, even for the government itself. We've all been consultants. There is no consultancy of 70 pages that is worth $17 million, no matter what on earth you have done. That's all I was saying. And so if we are moving forward to scrutinize the document itself in hope that we can find a semblance of value or importance as to why the government chose to pay this much for this document, that is really not the issue, because we know full well that whatever in that document, we've all read it now, we know that it's not any more valuable than anything else that has been produced before. So the question remains, why was the government compelled to produce a document like this and pay $17 million for it? The answer, from my point of view, is that the government was looking for neutrality. The government was looking for a sense of credibility. So if that government had hired me or Abraham or anybody else, people may have said, oh, but they are Dinka people. They produce a document that support the government of their own ethnic kin. I'm trying to read the mind of the government for hiring a foreign company to produce this. I'm sure they were playing to the ethnic politics in our country. My point is that despite that being the case, the government is still messed up. It produced a document which is not as valuable or any more valuable than documents before. It then sat on it for all these years. And then when the country has come to a moment of a threat to explode, the government of Salva Kiir releases it and escalates it by doing so the potential for the country to explode. So what was it for? Is it to create more chaos in South Sudan? Or is it to single out Taban Dengai as the one who created the previous war and is about to create another war? If that is the case, why can't you call Taban Dengai right now? Even if you wanted to become even more grave, why can't you just arrest him now to prevent him from creating another round of war? Thank you.
Well, thank you. I have a question from True Africa. Two questions. That was actually my thought that I lost previously. I wanted to make comment on that point that Professor Jog made. Why didn't they arrest Taban Dengai and those who were plotting? I think that is an extremely important question. And it goes to exonerate those who are skeptical about the coup narrative. It is a legitimate question. So there are two problems. First, either the intelligence didn't tell the president in advance that this plot was there, and therefore I failed to prevent, which is the reason the government collects intelligence is to prevent bad things from happening, is to prevent anyone from taking government unconstitutionally, or any other type of crime against the state or against individuals. So if you know information in advance, you act to prevent it from happening. So if the government was aware of all this are things happening, and they didn't act, they didn't move on these individuals, what does that tell you? Were they afraid of these individuals? Or did they really want this thing to happen so that they can do what they want with it? I think I tend to believe the other, that they really want this fight to happen. Both sides wanted this fight to happen as a show of dominance. Who is the dominant party? Who is the dominant power? And to get rid of these other guys completely once and for all. And so maybe they knew this information, and maybe they even assisted them, pushing them to the edge so that they can actually do it. So then their plan would be realized. That means they had their own plan, and they want these guys to do their thing so that their plan could be put in place. And so this is a very serious question, and the government has, this is why the government has a responsibility to explain itself. Why didn't it take preventive action? Why was it easy for the president to dismiss the vice president and the secretary general of the party, but not arrest people who are plotting a coup? Why? That goes to show that they wanted this thing to happen so that they can implement their plan, which we don't know. It has not been reported here. Number two, it also goes to the question of what was going on at that time. Taban was no longer a governor. He was kicked out. He was not commanding any forces. And the guy that he was talking to was a presidential guard, but he's not the head of presidential guard. Why wasn't the presidential guard authorized to monitor or to take action against his commander who was talking outside to an outsider? So these are intelligent questions that we must ask as citizens, and they only make the report so ridiculous in terms of what it is trying to achieve. So I will not go further in that, and I appreciate Professor Jok for pointing this out, that this was a fundamental error of judgment on the side of government. They missed the opportunity to do what was right. Arrest these guys and foil their plans and take them to court. And if the court doesn't agree with you, and even if they are released, you would have at least prevented the coup.
Absolutely. Yep.
This is the responsibility of the government. The national security need to explain why didn't they do this. The SPLA at that time, it was not SSPDF yet. It has something to explain. What was the military intelligence doing? The president himself has an explanation to do. Why didn't they arrest coup plotters that they knew all along?
Yep.
So, but not standing those questions, you still have to question what was the plan. Why did they allow this to happen, knowing in advance that it was in the making? So I will stop at that. The question that came as well is why am I dismissing the need for citizens to know such information? I don't have a problem with citizens knowing this information, but the type of information that should go to citizens is one that doesn't provoke violence, doesn't provoke moral outrage, doesn't provoke a sense of somebody being targeted. It is not a common thing that we get to know criminal charges against individuals. For example, have the information been released about the Minister of Finance who was accused of having stolen money? Do we know anything about the investigation about that? We don't know. Have they released a report, a detailed report of what happened to the Dura saga? They didn't. People died in Yorul 2 years ago about on the plane, and they said they were going to investigate what the cause of the plane is. We are still waiting. Ezekiel Lol was accused of having done some inappropriate things and that he was going to be investigated. Do we know information about that? We don't. Many people were investigated, and this information is not made available to the public. Why? Because it is sensitive and it has some personal things. That's why I said such information is okay for the public to know. But the type of report you release to the public is a report where the government sits down, make a legislation, form a commission of inquiry or a committee to go and investigate. And then now you make it public that we are investigating this. And once the report is out, you declassified some of it, some of things that are sensitive that you know may cause problems, you keep it. And then you release a public version. I don't have a problem with that. But information is dangerous. Information, people act on information. And so if you release information that is likely to divide the country, even if we have a right to know, we wouldn't want our country to be divided. That's the only basis that I said this report can provoke a certain reaction. It can provoke a situation of certain people or certain communities being targeted, and it doesn't help in the healing process of our country. That is the only basis why I said such information should not have been released at this time, especially when we are in a bad shape. Now, if Dr. Riek Machar was on the stage with Taban Dengai and others, and they said, people of South Sudan, we have caused you so much suffering. We have now reconciled. We want to move forward. And we apologize for all the crimes that we committed. And we are releasing information as part of this healing process about events that led to the conflict in 2013 and 2016. That's a different game altogether. We could say, yeah, bring it on. Thank you very much. But if it is Riek Machar, so now that goes to a third question that was raised by someone who said that what do you think is the way forward? Or no, actually it is Ajang. Ajang said, what do you think would be the reaction from the other political parties? Now, what if Dr. Riek Machar comes out with this report detailing how Salva Kiir, Paul Malone, Akolkor, and others had planned to massacre the Nuer in Juba? What do you think will happen? That will be a problem, right? So it will be a problem. That's why these things need to be handled with care, so that you don't aggravate a situation that is already bad. And so I think the reaction of the other parties, to answer the question of Ajang, they are likely to come out and exonerate themselves and say, no, we didn't do it. We were pushed. We were the victims here. And they will be able to tell their own narratives. Because some of these individuals were powerful. They were in the national security. They were in the army. They knew they have a lot of information. They could share even some documents that are incriminating against the president or people who are on the side of the government. And now, where will that take us as a country? That is the fear that we have. Thank you very much.
Abraham, you broached a topic very briefly, and I wanted to complete your thought.
Okay.
Which is that when President Kiir, as we imagine, would have been informed by his intelligence officers that we have intercepted Taban Dengai talking to somebody, plotting a coup, and here is the information. The reality is that President Kiir himself has talked to some people about it and what he was going to do. Where is that information? Mm-hmm. If we are being honest about bringing to bear and bearing information clean, it doesn't help any of us. to bring forth information exchange between Taban and others plotting a coup, and you don't bring to us what you have communicated to your people in reaction to that information. If you wanted really the whole country to come clean in a dialogical process where we are saying we don't want war, we just want the facts out. Here is what Taban said to his people. Here is what I said to my people in reaction. Wouldn't that be really a beautiful thing? And wouldn't that not save us all the heartache? I think when we want to open somebody's information to the public, we should also reckon with the possibility that they are looking at us and expecting us to also reveal what we said in secrecy towards that. And I think President Kiir would do us all the respect by saying, here is the totality of communication that took place between me and my lieutenants, between Riek Machar and his people, between Taban and his people. All of us are responsible for what has happened in this country. Let us reveal all of it, as you said, by coming on the stage and saying, we all did this, we all did this. And there is now information about it. We are revealing it to you in the interest of us underlining and saying the bygones be bygones. The country has suffered enough. Let us start a new page. If that were to be the case, this information has no problem.
Yeah, that's a question coming from James to you, Dr. Job. And actually, it will be both of you, actually. This is a good. He's asking you, Dr. Job, what do you think would be a best way to rescue our country from this crisis? Actually, this question is going to both of you.
Okay. I'll be brief in answering that. There are two options. One is our so-called leaders as they stand today, those holding public office, the president and 5 vice presidents, the ministers, the leaders of the political parties, those people who call themselves leaders today would be called to a test to demonstrate their leadership capacity. The people of South Sudan want to measure leadership by how much compromise you offer, how much willingness you show for South Sudan to be in peace, even if that did not lead to you holding a public office. So that is what we need. It's leadership that prioritizes the country and its citizens, their future, their welfare, stability, and peace. That is what we need right now. And it is all in the hands of our leaders, whoever they are, and however broadly we define leadership, including us, everyone, anyone, Awolich, myself, Joseph Madut, Abraham Madut, and everybody who is a leader in their own little corner. If we are to have a country that is stable and peaceful, we all have to demonstrate our leadership. But there is more leadership in the hands of people who are wielding power. There is a president with all the army under him. There are all these vice presidents with their militias under them. There are parliamentarians. There are people holding public office. Therefore, they have more power in their hands than we do, than any of us does. And if they were to exercise that leadership role that they have, to say there is nothing under the sun that can stop me from prioritizing the independence, the peace and prosperity of South Sudan. Even if that costs me any potential for me holding office, I will definitely do it. That is a basic thing. The second part of it, what could be done, is that having seen for 17 years that the SPLM has been in power in South Sudan and has shown us nothing by way of welfare, by way of stability, by way of infrastructure, by way of political unity of the country, and on the contrary, it has done so much damage to the unity of the country, by its action? Having seen all of this, then the alternative is in the hands of people of South Sudan right now as we speak. The people of South Sudan will be the ones who say, we have invested too much in our leaders, and our leaders have disappointed us. And it doesn't look like 17 years on that any of them is willing to put us ahead of their aspirations. So now the time has come for us to take our country back from these misleaders. And the way to take it back is to contact each other, work across ethnic lines, work across professional lines. Let's neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood. Let's workers' union to workers' union. Let's student union to women's union. Let's farmers' unions to traders' unions. Let the people, the political forces of South Sudan of all kinds say with one voice that there is no more hope that our leaders will deliver us. Our traditional political leaders, as they stand, are not delivering us. So let's take our country back together and let us talk with each other about how to do that. And I think if they did, they will find an answer to deliver this country from this mayhem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Joke. My answer is short. Join the PCCA if you want to rescue the if you want to rescue this country from the crisis, join the PCCA. Why? Because we believe that we have given trust to our leaders for 17 years, and you have just seen how they are managing a very simple situation. It is going to end up in a disaster, conflict. And there are people who like this conflict to happen. They want it to happen. Just like it was in 2013, there were people who just wanted it to happen. Even if they had the capacity to prevent it, they want it to happen. The same thing now, in 2022, there are people who want this conflict to happen. They want this country to go back to war. They know the information. They have the capacity to stop it, but they are fanning it instead. So it is for the people of South Sudan to say, there is no South Sudan without us. The time has come now for us to raise our voices and to challenge the authority and to say, give us peace, give us unity, give us freedom, or get out. Give us peace, give us unity, give us freedom, or get out. That is basically the bottom line. So the key thing to do right now is to prevent the war from happening. And one way of preventing the war from happening is to call out those people who are planning to return the country to war. And the release of this document is an element of returning the country to war, in addition to undermining the other parties who have a stake in the country, undermining their authority, undermining their organization, and intimidating their leaders, or rather portraying their leaders in bad light. Those are things that don't build unity, and they don't build reconciliation. They lead to war. And so it is for us to actually call on President Kiir and those who gave him this advice that you are actually taking the country to war. And if you don't know, we have just told you now. So stop it. Let's go back on the negotiation table. 2, the peace agreement has been mutilated so bad, so that trust has been killed or have been depleted by these actions. So Dr. Riek Machar doesn't go to bed at night in Juba feeling confident that he is safe. And I'm sure the same is true with Taban Dengai. They don't go to bed feeling safe. And therefore, they cannot trust an agreement that they feel has now become a trap for them, that is likely to take their lives. So if we want to revive this sense of trust, we have to enter dialogue as a country, and we have to bring on board others that we dismiss. Those of Thomas Chirilo, those of Paganamum. You don't throw away your liberators; they will haunt you. History is such complicated, so bring them back home. Even if you don't give them presidency, let them stay at home. Let bring the General Oya Idenga come home. And so it is those who have power that have the capacity to reach out. What are they going to give you? What is Oya going to give you? What is Paul Malone going to give you? Or what is Pagana Mum going to give you? They have nothing. They don't have power. They don't have influence now. So it is to you to reach out to them and to offer them legitimate heart of reconciliation. And they will come home. And you open a dialogue for the future of the country to be determined collectively by all of us. Not those who sat behind the screens to write this incriminating report against some individuals. So I think beside joining the PCCA, you can also, in your own right, stand for the truth, because a country goes to war when truth is dead, when we are made to believe made-up stories, when we are coerced to go along because our ethnicity is threatened. These are the ways you destroy a nation. And it is up to us for now to say enough of that. These are all created stories. There is no animosity between the Dinka and the Nuer, or animosity between the Equatorians, because they are not fighting over anything. The real story is that there are leaders fighting over leadership, and they create these stories to give themselves advantage politically. And it is time for us to begin to reject those. So that is my solution to the to what we need to rescue this crisis. But there is more that could be done. One, the unification of the armed forces is critical in regaining that confidence, that trust that has been lost. And it is my belief that South Sudan has been so dishonest to itself that it cannot do this on its own. So I therefore think that if we need to have a unified army, we need international support to do this. Maybe UNMISS, which is there, can help us unify the army. Maybe the African Union, Peace and Security Council can do that. Maybe the UN Security Council should provide some experts to help us unify our army. And maybe they should give us some resources to do it. Because without that, we really cannot trust each other. And we cannot create a conducive political environment to have an election. So political dialogue, unification of the army, these things are critical for us to move out of the current crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. My last question, we have 7 minutes or 6 minutes left for our show. The last question, Dr. Joke. I have seen United States release a statement other day. They were expressed the concern going on over the growing tension in the South Sudan. So what do you think? Can you gentlemen comment about that statement that United States released about the tension going on in Juba? And the last question, if there is an end to the power struggle between the President Salva Kiir Mayardit and the first Vice President, Dr. Riek Machar. So this will be our last question. Then, yeah, go ahead, Dr. York.
Yeah, on the U.S. concern, every South Sudanese who is literate and has been able to follow the news on South Sudan since the 1990s will say that we all need to give credit to the United States and give thanks to the United States for standing with the people of South Sudan throughout the years of the darkest part of their history. So when the United States sees South Sudan going down the spiral as it is now, I would say many corners of the U.S. community, be it government or ordinary people, their heart sink when when South Sudan is going down after having attained her sovereignty, thanks to support by goodwill people of goodwill, including the U.S. So I think as the U.S. is watching the events unfolding in Juba, I think there are lots of people in the United States, from the Southern Baptist Christians to U.S. senators to ordinary citizens in the NGOs and the churches. A lot of them are just as much pained about this as South Sudanese themselves are pained by it. So I wasn't surprised to see that the U.S. government is very concerned about the developments in South Sudan, and that they are asking questions. What can we do as a people and a government that has always stood by the people of South Sudan? What can we do at this hour where the people and the country are being failed by their leaders? And when they ask us this, we tell them the same thing that we've just been talking about. We tell them, uh, talk to our leaders, pressure them, write to them, talk to other world leaders who can then talk to them with the key message, and that is what it will take for South Sudan to be stable is South Sudanese leaders themselves. There is no amount of pressure or wealth or military might that the world can bring to bear on the situation in South Sudan. It's only the leaders of South Sudan who can rescue their own country. And if these leaders have the country at heart, they can do it in no time. With a twitch of a finger, they can do that. With regards to the follow-up question to that, which is, what do we think should be done? What should the world do? What is it that is going to deliver South Sudan? I also still say that we need solidarity from all corners of the world, including solidarity with our people who are hungry and need humanitarian aid, solidarity with refugees in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, and Congo, Central African Republic. There is no need for our people to be in refugee camps at this hour in our history after having attained our independence. And all we ask ourselves and our friends and the whole world is stand in solidarity with these people and do whatever is possible within your powers to help South Sudan dignify the lives of its people, of her people, and bring them back home. It's better to be poor in your country than to be a refugee in a foreign country where you are being abused. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Abraham.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. I think you eloquently said it. I don't have much. So we definitely appreciate the United States' continuous involvement in South Sudan, even if there are people now in our country who think that U.S. statements are a nuisance to them. We have to remember that we gain our independence very much because the United States said so. After recognizing our heroic fighting for freedom, they supported that. And they always stand on the side of freedom. Now that we are abusing ourselves, and there are people who are still asking to be given that freedom, and the United States stands with people who are asking for freedom and for the protection of their human rights, there are men and women in our country who think that they should stop talking now because it is their turn to commit abuses and to violate human rights and other people's freedom. So we think that the U.S. should continue to stand with the people of South Sudan and to help them protect their basic human rights and basic freedom and liberties, and which is a core value of the United States. But to bring change to South Sudan, statements are not going to be enough. We think that the United States can do more. We know that the United States is involved in Ukraine, and it has a lot of burden carrying the weight of policing the world. But they should not lose sight of the situation in South Sudan, which still requires their attention. Unfortunately, our people still have to be fed by their generosity, and human rights abuses are still happening. And so we need the United States to do more, recreate an international coalition in support of South Sudan, so that South Sudan can exit this abyss, which is getting deeper and deeper, and we are not helping ourselves in getting out of that abyss. So thank you very much, and we continue to look forward for robust international engagement with the South Sudanese leaders and with the regional leaders being vocal about the need to move South Sudan beyond conflict. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. We are come to an end. Our last word-in. Let me start with my co-host, True Africa in Clubhouse. True Africa, if you can open your mic and put in your last word.
Thank you so much, Madut. First of all, the time is not on our side. I will first appreciate Professor Madut for your well-articulated analysis on the recent document. And my brother Awolich, yeah, you spoke well. And that's what we need about Sudan. We need to analyze something with the sense of patriotism. And on the same note, the current situation of our country required a lot of things, especially from citizens, not from political class. And Professor put it clearly before that for us to rescue the country, they need citizens to rise up and demand their rights and dignity from the leaders. And Abraham, you said perfectly that no amount of pressure or sanctions from international community will salvage that country. And that's very true. The remaining is for the citizens to speak. But do citizens have that courage to speak? No. The citizens also need civic education, because most of them don't even know their rights. I was even to ask you about these two chapters, that is chapter 2, that talk about the relationship of international community and the government of South Sudan. Basically, that chapter tells us that the government has lost trust in international community based on their reports. And another chapter is chapter 4, we talk about A1.5. Literally, A1.5 Minnesota originally claimed that both presidents were not aware of what was happening outside. President Kiir, Dr. Yap, and Dr. Van Eager. But in this report is telling us that it was being planned and well coordinated by the IO leadership. I was even to ask you to comment on that chapter and chapter 1 to see what is the relationship between unities of South Sudan, which you said you have done, but unities can help the country in implementing chapter 2, that is security arrangement. But our government has no faith with the unities. And we are seeing a lot of things the unities is doing to our country. But time is not on our side. We will meet next time. And also we need to re-examine the effect of which you have talked a lot, effect of this document on the current agreement. Whether the agreement will move on or the document will actually run agreement around. The way forward, we have spoken about it. And my last question for you to make your final comment later, I need you to answer this question, two of you, Abraham and Professor. Whom do you think in South Sudan is safe in his or her hands among the current political class in our country now? Up to this level, I can say thank you so much for your time, and let's keep talking. Let's keep talking until we get the common ground for us to meet and enjoy the sense of being patriots of that country. May God bless you. May God
Thank
bless
you very much.
Video
Thank you very much.
on Clubhouse.
Thank you, True Africa. Yeah, go ahead, Abraham. Respond to him in your last statement.
Well, it's to say that I'm really grateful for the South Sudanese who have created platforms such as this, such as the Eagle Media, the Lake State Media, and the Voice of the Nation Television and other houses that give people of South Sudan an opportunity to express themselves. The reason is simple: they cannot do so in their own country. And so people have to use these platforms to express themselves. So I appreciate that very much. And to our fellow countrymen and women who are listening, we should not allow South Sudan to be driven to the sea by a few individuals. We have the numbers on our side if we decide to reject the drivers that are driving this vehicle to the sea. Not only should we jump out of the vehicle, we should actually get rid of the driver. We should actually fire the driver and the conductor who are driving our bus to the sea. We have the numbers and we have the constitutional mandate to do this. And our way of doing that is to ask for a national dialogue, a political dialogue in the country, a recognition of the results of the national dialogue that has gone on already, and obviously ask for an election. That is as simple as that. That is how you get rid of it. I'm not saying we should make a coup. I don't support a coup. But we have the power. We have what they call the sovereign power to give state responsibility to someone else that we think is vision aligned with our own vision as a country or as a nation. The only thing that is standing between us and this goal is fear, or simply being unable, or being feeling powerless, feeling that there is nothing we can do. Yes, there is something we can do. If 1 million of us go to Juba and say we want this, it will be done. Thank you very much.
Yes, as a
thank you, Abraham.
Yeah, thank you both Abrahams. As a last comment from me, I want to ask all of us a question. We have the tendency from regime supporters and from skeptical South Sudanese and from South Sudanese who are standing on the wall waiting to see where the power will fall. To all of them, they are saying to us, they are trying to to sort of paint us as people who are against the state or against the government, and they don't like us. We are being a nuisance. Why do we have to point out all these things? This is the attitude we get all the time in our various fora where we all individually interact. We will be vilified as people who have jumped the ship of dialogue, and we are asking for immediate change, and we are being seen as enemies of the state. Those of us who are publicly critical of the situation. And my question to you all is, if you don't accept that role or being a nuisance or being critical or being even a sellout if the diehards of the regime want to call you that. If you don't want that role, here is the question you ask yourself. Do you think the people who are benefiting from the status quo today, people who are cashing in big time from oil money, from tax revenue authority being collected from all the international borders, people who are cashing and pocketing the money of our people, do you think they like us? Of course they don't like us, because we are disrupting their gravy train. Do you think Khartoumers in 1983 loved John Garang when he went into the bush to fight a war for liberation? Of course, nobody in Khartoum, nobody was benefiting, no beneficiary of the regime of Khartoum at that time was happy with what John Garang did. So why do you think the Toot Cows, the Golden Boys, the so and so who are the beneficiaries of the regime as it is today, do you think they are happy with us challenging the status quo? Of course, no. They will never be happy, because they know and think that we are enemies of their bellies. We are enemies of their progression to benefiting from the regime. So I say, if people are going to call you names just because you want to disrupt this process, let them call you so, but never relent in that endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joke and Abraham Awolich, for coming in. This is the wonderful discussion. And I also want to say thank you for those who are watching on Facebook and YouTube and in Clubhouse. Thank you. We are coming to an end. I would like to thank you, gentlemen. Have a wonderful night. And thank you. Wonderful discussion. We looking forward for our country, the sustainability and peace among our people. That's what we're looking for. We don't need to see another chaos and death. So we need peace in that country. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
you. I apologize for those of you who asked the question and I haven't. We ran out of time. Our time is over. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yellow. Yellow. Shawl Begay, corruption they jump, and I do not haram my level. Whenever read a card, you know, we are walking the arm, you know, whenever read a card, you know, yeah, walking the arm, you know, whenever he come, Shabbat, you know, Shabbat, walking, Shabbat, you know, whenever he come, Shabbat, you know, Shabbat, walking, Shabbat, you know, Kulayom, Nasali, there in Salam, Walweda, Salam, they jump. Mashakil be jambu amna jinu haram alaikum kullu yawm nakori deni shakol mal hakuma shakol be jay corruption be jambu amna jinu haram alaikum junub kullu khair ata junub kullu khairat wanil kullu khair nila junub kullu
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
abad kullu khair abad junub kullu khairat jubal kullu khair jubal junub kullu khairat Rambo Sabal Watan, defend for Cedar Watan, Rambo Sabal Watan, defend for Cedar Watan. Yellow.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Salam Bejam, Masha مشاكل بيجمو أمنا جنوب حرام عليكم شغل بيجي corruption بيجمو أمنا جنوب حرام عليكم وأنا بريدك أرض الجنوب يا وطني أرض الجنوب وأنا بريدك أرض الجنوب يا وطني أرض الجنوب وأنا بريكم شباب جنوب شباب وطني شباب جنوب وأنا بريكم شباب جنوب شباب وطني شباب جنوب كل يوم نصلي دارين سلام والويدا سلام بيجم مشاكل بيجم أبناء جنوب حرام عليكم كل يوم نقول دارين شغل مع الحكومة شغل بيجي corruption بيجم أبناء جنوب حرام عليكم جنوب كل الخير جنوب
Thank you guys. Have a good night. Have a good day. Have a good night. Bye.
جنوب كل الخيرات بابا كل الخير بابا جنوب كل الخير